Good morning and welcome to OG Foundation, capital of the sovereign state of Valodium. I am a sovereign non-Valodium. This is Kit Kat. Yeah, the chickens are hanging out. Whoa, Cass is up in the tree. What are you doing up there, Cass? Like, getting at those plums, I bet. It's gonna be a plum paradise in here before long. What do you think, girl? Been eating all sorts of berries and fruit and it's that time of year, and we got another couple of months. So, this is not the project for this week. The project for this week is over here on the roof of this colored structure. The goal is to build ferrocement walls to enclose insulation, almost like the siding that will then enclose the insulation, and then try to make as much flat space on this entirely curved structure as possible, utilizing as much recycled material as possible as well. So the first step, I figure, is going to be building kind of like a wall, a ferrocement wall in line with that arch, and then I get to build another arch from the corner of this one to the corner of that one, and then enclose that triangular section of the tunnel, and then build a bond beam along the extension of that tire wall, and then fork it also over the edge of that structure to eventually connect with the corner of that structure and the rebar sticking out. So we will see how far we get with that. This part is usually the most fun because you get to create all sorts of shapes with rebar and then just sort of plop them in place and then add the remesh to the rebar and then add the lath to the remesh and then get some mortar going and you'll see the whole process. Look at this, unbelievable. Scarlett is just drinking my tea. Uh-oh, not Gunzel too. Oh, they're gonna be caffeine addicts for sure. You like that black tea, huh? Nice tea in the morning for the chickens. Now I'm basically making out with the chickens if I finish my tea. Of course I will. So this is a view into the creative process of making this shape. So I started with rebar. I put one piece of rebar down along these 3 tires that I want to bond, and I want to figure out how to put a bunch of weight on these 3 tires, especially this end one, or just the 3 of them. And so there's one tire, and then that bends up at the end. The rebar bends up to receive an arch. Then I did a rebar at the bottom to receive the arch, the bend at the bottom to receive the arch, which then bends up and connects with the first rebar. Then there's a 3rd piece of rebar which arches between the first 2 pieces of rebar and makes the arch, which is going to be the opening, even though it looks actually kind of a bit like an eye. So maybe I'll end up making it like an eye, or like a teardrop. So then, now that I have this metal kind of in place and kind of supported, and then I use this other 20-foot floor truss to kind of get a shape for, I think, what is going to be the shape of the front. Though it's different than I originally anticipated, but it might be the most efficient shape to do. So I might do kind of like a bond beam across that, similar to how I did on that wall. And then I'm going to tie in a piece of remesh over there for that wall. That will also tie into the floor that ends up going above it. So in the process of creation, here's an early kind of look. I was also thinking at some point maybe a bond beam over to there, because that would be a way to put a lot of the weight on this tire that I want to put on it. But that's probably not a this year project. We'll see. And definitely not right now, because I have limited resources of rebar and remesh and lath and everything. That's the main cost of this, other than the sweat that pours out of me when I'm on the roof in the sunshine, standing on black things. So I am going to now attach this piece of remesh and then see what I can do about extending a plane off of this line to start to make a geometric object. And then this plane I will then intersect with the edge of that geometric object, which is an arch, so that it continues from that, and then I'll have to intersect the other structure, and then kind of also allow for that form to be there for a time, because the form is going to get in the way of it. But anyways, that's where I'm at now. So I wanted to bend the remesh over that bond beam floor joist thing, and so based off of how I bent the remesh and still wanted that corner to go over the other structure, that is the shape of it. So it starts to take a shape. It ended up being a much different shape than I expected, and I could still cut it to be kind of like even with the rebar, but most likely I'm going to mortar it out all the way out to the full extension of that remesh, because I like the shape, and why not? Then with the second piece of remesh, intersecting the first plane, the second plane, and then the other structure while getting underneath that bond beam forms what this shape is going to look like, which also the second sheet ended up much differently than I expected, but that's just what results when you combine the factors, and it's going to be this cool kind of shape, which is probably hard to see right now, but next up comes the lath, and then with the lath it'll be really easy to see the shape. That's what it looks like with one piece of lath. And then over here, off of the floor joist, I screwed the plywood, and then I'm putting rebar and lath up against that. But I'm out of video recording space for this video. Thursday around noon, I'm just about ready to do a batch of mortar. I just need to set one more piece of rebar to go into this valley there, come through here, and then wrap around to the second piece of rebar, which is on the other side of this. So that ends right there. The one piece of rebar bends around that tunnel, like arches over the tunnel like that, to be able to get some good connection there. So I'm having a little difficulty. I wanted to send a piece of rebar kind of like up and then in line with that one, but it's too difficult and the spacing's not right, and ultimately I'm hoping it won't be necessary. And then that one I'm going to wrap around the far side with rebar, and then I'll connect all of that over there somehow eventually. But I'm just trying to get to a good point for today where I can start the first batch of mortar on all this. So Thursday afternoon, after one batch, you can see I just kind of anchor the edges to get things all sort of in place. The rebar and the lath wherever I can. Over here, this rebar is connecting these tires. That rebar is going down the length of that structure. They all connect. This is like a strong point, 4 different pieces of rebar connecting right there. So that's going to have to be a real solid rock. Then I got a piece of rebar going down the valley here. And then that rebar there is going to end up, I think, connecting to that one. But I've got to wait before I connect it, which might cause problems later on, but we'll see. And then the mortar is almost all the way over the arch in one, except for the very tip. And that's also what I was able to do since the last video, is I ran another line of rebar across the top of this. Originally I was going to make it a lot shorter, but since I had all the forms there, I was like, well, might as well just make it a really thick bond beam. So there's rebar on the top and bottom, about 2 feet apart. And I got mortar on a good, like 50% of that in the first batch, and then just starting to anchor it there. So I might try to do one more batch today, because there's probably enough areas where I can get more coverage. And then tomorrow is when I'll be able to make a lot of progress, because it'll all be anchored in and largely ready to receive. So basically so on the outside of there, that's all like a structural giant bond beam, basically the wall is. And then this will be one coming across this way. And then it's going to kind of like go in 2 directions here, like anchor over there, and then kind of like, I guess, anchor here. And then there'll be like a wall along that edge, which will connect to that corner. That's kind of what I'm thinking now. And then hopefully I can find a lot more insulative material to fill in a lot of these gaps. And it's going well for today. So I was able to get a second batch done today, Thursday. I mostly doubled up the anchor points on the rebar and around the edges. And I got a little bit on this wall here, which I'm wanting to put a lot of weight on that wall and help it to kind of anchor some things together. And then got really good coverage on this. This is all really fragile. It only has like a few contact points, like down at that corner, and then a few around here. But once this top rebar is integrated, the top rebar goes and then gets in line with that arch. It just comes off of the form a little bit there, so I didn't want to do the whole form. So once I pull the form, I'll be able to get that all in line. But good progress for today. Look at all the blackberries. They are just all over the place. I've already got several, probably like a quart. Definitely going to be sharing. One batch of mortar in today. Was it Friday? Saturday? I don't know. And that has got 3 coats on much of it. I think tomorrow I'll be ready to pull that form. So they could be kind of sketchy, but if I do it carefully, I think it'll be alright. So I'm about to do another batch of mortar. Anchored this down really well. The next batch of mortar is going to be going all up on here. And so what I'm going to do now is record making a batch of mortar, because one of the commenters in the last video asked for that. So the first thing is the materials. So each batch is a half bag of this Portland cement, which is 94 pounds. And each bag costs like almost $20 with tax. And then 3 buckets of sand and water. So I'll go get these buckets full of sand from that sand pile, separating out the kind of like roots as I see them in the any kind of rocks or whatever. And then I'll like set this up on a tripod to film the mixing. Okay, so I start with some of these fiberglass, like half-inch fiberglass, just a little pinch of that. And there's maybe a gallon and a half of water in there. So 1 bucket of sand, I'm going to do half of the mortar or cement before the next bucket of sand. Technical difficulties with this tripod situation. Hopefully that won't fall again. Just about done. Actually, I'm going to leave it just like that. I'm not going to add any more water because I want it a little bit thicker for this batch to go on the lap. So there's a batch mix. It's just 3 buckets of sand, the half thing of cement, a little fiberglass, and some water. And if I was doing a second coat over what's already there, I would probably want a little bit more wet. But this will be good and sticky for what I'm doing now. And then that'll make 4 buckets. And it'll take probably 2 hours to apply. Or maybe 1 hour, we'll see. And now, since I got the tripod out, and I recently deleted a bunch of videos, I'll get some video of me applying it. I'll get the mortar. There's no ties right there, so I don't want to do that section until it's all tight. The angle of the diamonds of the lath is important as well. You want the broad side facing horizontally to be able to hold as much mortar as possible, as much surface area resisting as possible. You can go 2 ways. The other way it's more vertical, and it's like cuts through like a cheese grater. So it's easier to apply and less falls through if the lath is going a certain way. Later on I'm going to be bending that metal, which is going to bend everything else, so I'm trying to get this in well enough so that it can resist the force of that when I do that without breaking. In the first batch that I did, I got a second coat on top and a coat underneath of most of that arch. So it's pretty well in there already. And even as the first one from the day is pretty dry, it's not like solid, but it's drying. So it's pretty well supported right there. But the more you touch it and fuss with it, the more of the mortar falls through to underneath. So it's best to touch it as little as possible. And I start off doing the borders, because when you have a wet edge, then the new mortar can bond with it. getting the edge of this all the way to the bottom. Now I'm getting a second coat over what I did this morning on the outside. It's not cured, but it's solid enough to not get all crumbly as I apply another layer to it. And it's easier for this new mortar to bond with mortar set this morning versus older cured cement. It's getting a little bit weak, so probably means I want to put more on this side, or I'll probably leave the top for now, so the rest will just go in other places. All that, if it's too much weight, it'll deform the shape. I'm almost done with back and forth. And I'm watering it so it doesn't dry out too fast and it can harden more by completing more of its chemical processing. If it dries out too fast, it doesn't get hard. Here's another angle of that the next morning, Saturday morning, what the underside looks like. And today I'll get another batch on the top and the bottom. I'm going to pull that floor joist out and then adjust this metal and adjust this rebar the way I want it. And I'll give you an update after some of that stuff is done. I pulled this middle form and found little spots of cat poop that got into the mix because the cats use the sand pile as their kitty litter. Usually the poos will stay in clumps, but if it's more fresh, I guess they just get into the mortar mix. So I'm like scratching off like poop clumps out of the cement. This section here has all the forms removed. I prepped it by scraping off the little pieces of plywood that stuck from the form, bent all the staples up, scraped the kitty poop out. You can see like kind of how much it moves right now. I don't know if you can really see that. It moves a little bit, but not too much. It's pretty solid, even though it's about 1 inch thick and 4 feet high on the corner there. You can see the 2 lines of rebar, and I'm just gonna rinse it down with water to get a little more water in there to help it bond before I apply the mortar. The first batch of the day I got an undercoat on all that and then a backing on all that. Now I'm on the second batch of the day and second bucket. This one I made extra wet because I'm going over the top of this, and you can see in the first layer how there's cracks in there, and so you want the second layer on top extra wet to be able to like fill those cracks and bond with it extra well. And then after this one's applied, it will be watertight. Like in the rain, it'll still absorb some moisture for a while, but it won't leak. After batch 2 on Saturday, got a good second coat on most of the stuff from yesterday. Got a good first coat on some of the more stuff. Got that rebar in and bent, and got a good connection point between that bond beam and the other structure on the vertical at the bottom. And be ready for mortar tomorrow. 3 buckets into batch 2 on Sunday. I've got coverage on just about that whole new shape, just about that whole thing, and I moved the form over to here to make that wall, which will be the far side of sort of the containment vessel for the insulation and aircrete, which I'll probably be doing in a week or so after I can kind of enclose all this. But that's where we're at now. Kudo, or maybe Art, is beginning his wilderness survival experience. He has not really harmonized with the flock, so I'll come out and feed him, and if he survives for 2 weeks, perhaps he'll be a changed rooster and he can come back. We'll see. Hopefully he finds a tree for tonight. Well, I tried to put him in the tree, in the apple tree, like the last 2 boys, but he wouldn't stay up in there. He just jumped right out. So maybe he'll stay in the bush. We'll see. He came up to me. Oh boy. There's a horse upon us. Don't step on us. Oh boy, the horse. Oh, I got one. Oh, where'd you get all that water from? Oh, don't step on me. What are y'all doing? I got my chicken out here. I was hanging out with the chicken. Hey guys. Where'd you just come with all this water? Oh my gosh, you're getting me all this. Oh, God. Gross. What was that? You gotta find a tree. Looks like Wisdom wants to sit on eggs again. Monday morning. I don't think Kudo or Art, same chicken, 2 names, made it through the night. I can't find him. I did find another blackberry patch. This is a nice little hedge, but there's a number of them around here. But rest in peace, Kudo, Art. A clue, Sherlock. What surely looks to be a chicken feather. I suppose it could be a turkey feather. Up in a bush. Maybe he came this way. Or maybe it flew on the wind. Who knows? Monday morning. And just about ready for mortar. I did some more prep over here. Extending that lath wall. And then sort of like starting to make a step there. And then figured out what I'm going to do with that rebar. Sending it down kind of like an arch. Down to there. And able to close that off and get some good backing on the underside of the arch. Probably get the tip done in this next batch. Look at what the kitty left in this sand pile. How kind. Today I am taking all this waste insulative material from the nearby company business, and instead of this going to the dumpster, this is what I'm going to use to insulate the G-Loft roof. And there's a lot more of it, so this is perfect. After 3 trips, I got all the insulation that will possibly be needed for the gate tower. Easily several $1,000s worth of insulation. Free, and it's all saved from the landfill. I win. They win. Got them some beer. Everybody wins. Double, triple, quadruple positive. Great day. This is my cart at Home Depot. Steel, 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 cement, and a cold piece of lumber. 1,000 pounds of cement, and all the steel you need to build a castle. These 2 boys, Gala on the bottom and Bungare up top, are the next to go on their wilderness expedition. Just waiting for the right time to hear them fully come into their voices and be ready. Check out this angle. So at the end of the day, Tuesday, well, it's not really the end of the day, it's actually the middle of the day, but it's gonna rain. It says like storm in the afternoon, so I don't expect to get any more work done on this today. So this is the end point for the week. I got at least one coat on the wall up to the corner. I'm going to build some sort of staircase there, which I was unable to continue doing until I got more materials. You can kind of get an idea of how I'm like almost like making a big bathtub in here. Like, so I'll have to close off the edges and whatnot, and then I'll be using all of this insulation, thousands of dollars of free insulation, to fill as many of the voids as I can, and then I'll pour aircrete over the insulation, and then I'll do a Ferrocement floor over that to make as much of this area flat as I can, and then do some sort of transition into this area where I'm standing on now, so you can like walk from here or around is kind of the idea. And I think that'll have like 2 levels in there, but all that will be for next week. So that's the extent of the progress for this week. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you next week.